Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Project Hafidh and I'm your host, Umm Talha, and this is the final episode where we will be discussing some practical tips. I asked 7 mothers when interviewing for my book, Begin with Bismillah, what practical advice they will give to other mothers who are embarking on this wonderful, noble journey of raising their child as a Hafidh. And this is what they said. Well, I'm going to look at the book so that I can remind myself what advice they gave and share it with you. So, Yunus mentions how it's so important to start the child early. And as the earliest practitioner, I know a child is like a sponge in the early years. So having the child listen to the Quran, giving a mushaf to hold, all of that would help the child to aspire to becoming a Hafidh. So that's the first advice I would like to share with you, is to start the journey of Hifdh early and as early as possible. Yunus also shared with me that when she was pregnant with her son Yunus, who is a famous Qari now, mashallah, she used to listen to the Quran recitation, which was advised by her mother. And that is something that she advises, and I too would advise as well. It's so important to encourage your children to the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when they are in your womb. So starting early, that's advice number 1. Number 2, Ishaq mentions how it's so important to encourage a healthy bedtime routine. Why? Because the child needs to be rested. Child needs to have enough sleep, because sleep affects concentration and memorization. So you have to be mindful that a child who's memorizing the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets enough rest. And that means you as a parent have to be very strict with the bedtime. And that has to be non-negotiable. Of course, there will be days where there are unexpected events taking place, which you can make concession for. But generally speaking, you need to be very strict with their bedtime. That's advice number 2. Advice number 3 is something to do with parents. And that is given by Aqil. She mentions how it's important that environment in the home and parents' lifestyle has to be conducive to the child's memorization journey. What does she mean by this? So, if you're a parent who likes to listen to music, likes to do certain things that is contrary to Islamic guidance, that has to be revisited and adapted so the child sees changes in their home environment. How is it going to be the child next door is memorizing the Book of Allah and you're listening to music in the living room? It just doesn't work. So as parents, you have to choose a lifestyle that is compatible with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a very important piece of advice, and it may take a lot of struggle initially, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you. So that's advice number 3. Advice number 4 is something to do with parents as well, and that is to get involved, fully involved in the child's journey. And this piece of advice was given by Kamran, who is a single mother herself, and she mentions how she would get involved with the Hifdh teachers and she would participate in the school trips and really be part of the journey. And this is very important. Children need to see you in their picture of Hifdh journey, so they know that you care and you're not just outcome driven, but you are driven in the journey with interest and positive participation, inshallah. So this is the next advice. The other advice I would like to give is creating a support network around you. And this is huge. Why? As parents, when you tell your child something, over a period of time, it becomes like, a broken record. You need that force where the child is getting reminders from different people. And that's going to happen with having people on board, that social circle. And you may say, I don't live amongst, a Muslim community. I don't have a lot of, Muslim family members. I don't have this, I don't have that. But the thing is, you have to look at what you do have. And what many of us do have is access to online community. And that is something that everyone has. So create your own social circle that will help you to carry on this noble journey and motivate your child when the motivation is down. So social network, support network is very important. And that you can build from your child's Hifdh school, your child's madrasa class, your child's peers. Get to know other mothers and speak to them and create a force, a positive force to help your child in this journey. Another advice that I would like to share is what Dawood mentions. She says, consider homeschooling. And I would add to that and say that if you can't homeschool your child from primary to secondary, at least the early years and primary years. And that is doable because there's so much resources online. And we have seen during COVID how many mothers and fathers, they had to homeschool because they had no other option. The schools were closed. And it is doable because there's so much that you can access, free, live and online. And that is something that I felt personally was useful and conducive to homeschooling because you have a flexible timetable. So you can have Quran time as anchors in your day and use that to help you schedule in other sessions like maths, English and science and extracurricular activity. Another advice that I would like to share from another parent or mother of Hafidh is that to ensure you don't compare your child with other children because every child is unique. Every child has certain abilities, certain talents, and you must remember not to compare your child with other children, including your other child. Why? Because that can deflate the child's self-esteem. And we know this saying, comparing leads to despairing. You shouldn't compare your child with other children. I have heard mothers say that when they started comparing their child with other children, it really affected their self-esteem. And also it creates frustration within yourself. You think, why can't my son or my daughter do what my friend's son or daughter is doing? It's unhealthy for the parent and it's unhealthy for the child. It can be very damaging for the child, in fact. Another piece of advice I would like to give, or rather I would like to share, is that have a lot of positive role model. And by that, I mean role models that your child can relate to, who is on the same path. And that could be his cousin, his siblings, his friend, other children that he looks up to, a famous qari that he listens to. Have positive role models around the child. When I mentioned about the famous qari that he looks up to, sometime you may have events or tour by famous qari visiting your town. Take the time and opportunity to take your child to these events. Why? Because they will be inspired. Also, when you find there are events taking place in your neighborhood, events like Hufadh graduation or Quran competition, don't think, it's just another event. No, these events can really inspire your child and motivate your child to achieve the same goal. So take your child to these events. And also, there are role models online that you can introduce your child to. There's a very popular, a Hifdh status program podcast. You can get your child to listen to that. There are so many other programs that you can get your child to listen to. And this is creating that culture where the child is exposed to role models, positive role models. And this is something that one of the mothers mentioned. Now, there are so many advices that are mentioned in this book. And I think the main point I would like to leave you with is that you have to think carefully and look at what will aid the child in this journey and do what is necessary, because the idea is to help the child to progress and not stay stagnant. And that will require you to think of ideas, initiative, solution that will move the child forward. And that is what you want until the child memorizes the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, here I must say, once they finish, it's not like the finishing line. Actually, that's when the real journey starts, which is living by what they have memorized. And one of the things I would share with you is to have discussion with your child about the meaning in the Quran, because that will get them connected with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yunus mentions how once they memorize the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, encourage them to revise, to go over what they have memorized. And the best way to do that is to lead in the masjid in Taraweeh, because that will help them to revise what they have memorized, inshallah. So with this, I shall leave you. I hope you have found this series beneficial, and I hope you have discussion with your family, because when we have discussion, that's when more ideas come to our mind. And if you have more ideas, that will have a huge impact in your Quran journey, supporting your son or your daughter memorizing the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was a wonderful pleasure to be with you. I hope you found this beneficial. Until next time, inshallah, I shall leave you with this. I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes your path easy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.